April 8, 1943. 27,000 feet above Caen, France. The night sky is split by silver tracer fire and the rising glow of flak bursts, blooming like poisonous flowers beneath the clouds. A formation of German Ju-88 night fighters claws for altitude, their engines howling through the darkness as their radar operators strain to find a target. But somewhere up there, beyond the range of their instruments, a ghost is already watching them. The de Havilland Mosquito. RAF designation. NF Mark II. Crew of 2. Constructed mostly from Canadian birch and balsa wood, bonded with cassane glue, polished until its skin reflected moonlight like liquid mercury. On German radar, it barely existed. On the night of April 8th, Flight Lieutenant Robert S. Findlay and his navigator, Flying Officer John Jeffries, fly one of the most advanced aircraft in the world, made absurdly from furniture wood. Radar contact 2 miles ahead, Jeffries says into the intercom, eyes glued to the flickering cathode tube of the AIMK-4 radar set. Below them, the French countryside glimmers faintly. Farmhouses, faint roads, rivers like strands of steel. The Mosquito banks left, engines humming in eerie harmony. Through the gun sight, Findlay sees the faint outline of a German bomber ahead, slower, heavier, unaware. He throttles forward. The Mosquito surges, climbing effortlessly to overtake. At full power, this wooden aircraft can hit 415 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter currently in the sky. Findlay presses the trigger. 4 20mm Hispano cannons rip the night apart. The Ju-88 explodes in a blinding burst, fragments scattering like sparks over the black fields below. Before the German searchlights can even converge, the Mosquito is gone, vanishing into the night as if it had never existed. In Berlin, Luftwaffe High Command would later receive another baffling report. Enemy aircraft too fast to intercept. Possibly experimental. Construction unknown. They would never guess it was made of wood. 3 years earlier, in the summer of 1940, laughter echoed through the offices of the German Air Ministry. Reports had come in about a strange new British aircraft, one supposedly built almost entirely from plywood. Ein Holzflugzeug, one colonel scoffed, waving the file in disbelief. A wooden plane? England must be out of aluminum. The room erupted in laughter. To the Germans, obsessed with engineering perfection, metal, rivets, armour, the idea was ridiculous. Wood belonged in furniture, not dogfights. Meanwhile, at the de Havilland factory in Hatfield, England, a handful of engineers were working in secret on what their own air ministry had also dismissed. Geoffrey de Havilland, the aircraft's designer, believed that speed was the only armour worth having. Strip away the turrets, the gunners, the heavy defensive plating, all of it. What if a bomber could simply outrun the enemy instead of fighting them? The proposal reached the Royal Air Force in 1939. Their response? Unarmed? Wooden? Impossible. They demanded more guns, more armour, more weight. Everything de Havilland refused to add. But de Havilland persisted. Gentlemen, he said in a meeting that would later become legendary, the fastest aircraft in the world will be made of wood. Carpenters, cabinet makers and furniture craftsmen were recruited from across Britain. They worked not in military hangars, but in converted furniture workshops, bending thin layers of birch and balsa around moulds, gluing and clamping them with the same precision once used for grand pianos. Even during the Blitz, the Mosquito took shape quietly in backrooms and barns. By late 1940, the first prototype, W4050, rolled out under the cloudy Hertfordshire sky. It looked fragile, delicate even, with its smooth wooden fuselage and lack of armament. But when it took off on November 25th, the world's perception of fragile changed forever. Observers on the airfield watched in silence as the Mosquito climbed effortlessly and disappeared into the clouds. When it returned, the test pilot stepped out with a grin. "She flies like nothing else," he said, and he was right. At 392 miles per hour, without a single gun, the prototype was faster than the Spitfire, faster than any fighter in Hitler's Luftwaffe. The laughter in Berlin would continue for a while longer. But in a few months, the wooden joke would begin haunting their skies. By 1942, the Mosquito had gone from experiment to legend. Factories from Canada to Northern Ireland churned out its elegant wooden frames, each one a masterpiece of craftsmanship disguised as war machinery. Crews began calling it the Wooden Wonder. The Germans had another name, Der Holzteufel, the Wooden Devil. Its first missions were photographic reconnaissance runs over occupied Europe. The Mosquito flew so high and so fast that German fighters could barely reach it. Pilots returning from France would boast that they could see the Eiffel Tower through their cameras while Messerschmitts scrambled helplessly miles below. The Luftwaffe grew furious. Commanders ordered faster interceptors, stronger flak coverage, anything that could stop these ghost planes from slipping through their defences. Nothing worked. Then came the bomber variant. January 31st, 1943. Daylight raid over Berlin. The Mosquitoes flew in broad daylight, not by stealth, but by sheer audacity. They dropped their bombs on the Reichstag, just as Hermann Göring was about to give a speech. Enraged, Göring shouted at his staff, "They've made me look like a fool in front of my own people." Those damned wooden planes. Each raid cut deeper, not because of the damage, but because of the humiliation. Göring had once bragged that no enemy aircraft would ever bomb Berlin. The Mosquito proved him wrong, and it did so again and again. Inside its cockpit, life moved fast. The pilot and navigator sat side by side beneath a glass canopy, surrounded by the hum of twin Merlin engines, the same engines that powered the Spitfire. There was no armour to protect them, no gunner to watch their tail, just speed and skill. The controls were light, responsive. The Mosquito danced through the sky like a living thing. One pilot described flying it as balancing a knife on your fingertip. Another said, if you made a mistake, she'd kill you. But if you respected her, she'd make you a god. In one mission over Norway, a formation of mosquitoes raced across fjords so low that their wingtips sliced through mist above the water. Flak exploded all around them, echoing off the mountains like thunder. They struck the German U-boat pens at Trondheim, then vanished back into cloud cover, leaving the defenders shooting at ghosts. The German propaganda machine couldn't explain it. Their reports spoke of a new metal alloy or experimental jets. The truth was even more humiliating. It was wood, glued, sanded and polished by British carpenters. And still, it was only getting faster. By 1944, the Mosquito had evolved from a curiosity into one of the most feared and versatile aircraft of the entire war. It wasn't just a bomber or a scout. It was whatever the mission demanded. Pathfinder, night fighter, intruder, bomber escort, precision striker. Its adaptability became its deadliest weapon. On February 18, 1944, that versatility would make history. The mission was called Operation Jericho. Objective, the Amiens prison in German-occupied France. Inside were 120 members of the French resistance, scheduled for execution within hours. The plan was insane. Blow open the prison walls with pinpoint accuracy so prisoners could escape. The Mosquitoes flew in low, barely skimming the frozen French countryside. Trees blurred beneath them. Church steeples flashed past their wings. Inside one cockpit, Pilot Group Captain Charles Pickard's jaw was set in grim focus. His navigator, Flight Lieutenant J.A. Broadley, kept his eyes on the stopwatch. Timing was everything. At 12:03 p.m., the first wave of mosquitoes screamed over Amiens. Their bombs struck with surgical precision, shattering the outer walls and guard towers without levelling the entire complex. Seconds later, Pickard's plane dove in for the second run. Prisoners poured into the snow, fleeing through the smoking gaps as German guards scrambled in confusion. But flak found its mark. Pickard's Mosquito was hit. Witnesses saw it trailing smoke, climbing desperately northward before exploding in the distance. He and Broadley were killed instantly. Yet the mission succeeded. Over 250 prisoners escaped that day, and word of the Wooden Avengers spread through occupied Europe like wildfire. Everywhere the Mosquito went, it defied logic. In Norway, it bombed Gestapo headquarters in Oslo with such precision that nearby civilian buildings remained intact. In Denmark, it destroyed the Shell House, another Gestapo base, without damaging the surrounding neighborhood. Each time, the German commanders sent urgent cables. Intercept immediately. Each time, their fighters arrived too late. The Mosquito was gone before they could even climb to altitude. Hermann Göring, furious beyond measure, famously declared, "It makes me furious when I see the Mosquito. I turn green and yellow with envy. The British, who can afford aluminium better than we can, knock together a beautiful wooden aircraft that every piano factory over there is building. And they give it a speed which surpasses ours." Even the Reichsmarschall had to admit defeat. The Mosquito had made a mockery of the Luftwaffe's pride, and it did so with carpentry and glue. As 1945 loomed, the Mosquito's legend had already outgrown the war itself. From Europe to the Pacific, it had proven that simplicity and ingenuity could defeat arrogance and excess. It wasn't made from steel or fear. It was made from imagination. In the closing months of the war, Mosquito crews flew missions deeper into Germany than any other bomber. They struck Berlin by day, Leipzig by night, and often returned with no escort, unscathed. When German jet fighters like the Me-262 finally appeared, they were faster, but not by much. And unlike the fragile jets, the Mosquito could climb, dive, and vanish into cloud cover before the jets could line up a shot. Inside those cramped wooden cockpits, young men sat shoulder to shoulder, barely in their 20s, trusting their lives to glue and craftsmanship. Each mission began the same way. Quiet, nervous hands checking gauges. A nod between pilot and navigator, then the twin Merlin engines roaring to life, their thunder echoing off hangar walls. As the plane accelerated down the runway, the wooden frame shuddered, lifted, and, miraculously, held. The Mosquito wasn't invincible. Hundreds were lost to flak, mechanical failure, or the sheer odds of war. But its impact was undeniable. It carried no armor, yet it shielded the Allies with its speed. It bore no heavy guns, yet it destroyed more high-value targets than almost any aircraft of its time. It was proof that brilliance could come from defiance. When peace finally came, many surviving Mosquitoes were quietly decommissioned. Their wooden frames, built for speed, not longevity, began to fade. Some were left to rot in damp hangars, their glue joints splitting, their once sleek bodies eaten by time. But to those who flew them, the memories never aged. Veteran pilot Peter Watson once said, "We didn't fly it, we wore it. The Mosquito wasn't just fast, it was alive." Today, only a handful still fly, their engines echoing like ghosts over green fields that once trembled under their roar. But every time one takes to the sky, something remarkable happens. The laughter that once filled those Berlin offices falls silent again. Because the wooden plane that everyone mocked turned out to be faster than fear, stronger than pride, and lighter than death itself. The de Havilland Mosquito didn't just outrun the enemy, it outran time.